DegeNation family, what is going on? What is happening? We are live. Week 17 DFS is upon us for the NFL. I'm your host, Ryan Williams. You can find me on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. And I'm joined by the usual suspects, Mr. Kevin Steele at FantasyWrath13 and Mr. Maddie Dickinson at Maddie_D_30. And like I said, for week 17, we are live. So if you're in the YouTube channel, hop in, get your questions in. It is a fun and interesting slate that we have going on, which is usually the likeliest of hoods when you're dealing with week 17. There's people who are sitting, there's people who are injured, there's people who are playing for situations. So we have a very interesting slate, fellas. And before we get into everything, I want to know what you guys are doing this week to attack this slate. Because as we're talking, or as you two were talking pre-show, there is value on the slate to be had, but that's usually where we find ourselves in a lot of trouble, right? Is trying to figure out what value is good, where are the duds, who are maybe the studs that people are overlooking. So I'm going to start with you, Maddie. We're doing this on Saturday live. Maddie's coming in from the remote area that is his parents' house. We appreciate you being on, Maddie, and let's just get right into the slate and let's talk strategy here with the fellas and ladies. And if you just want to unmute your mic too, that'd be great.
That's probably a good start, huh? Podcast 101.
There he is. There he is.
The mic. No, it's good to be here, man. I'm glad we were able to kind of make this work on such a busy week for everybody. This is an interesting slate, as you mentioned. There's definitely some trappy value, I feel like. So it's going to be a matter of sifting through which value guys you think are the best, and then kind of building from there. But I mean, in terms of like roster construction this week, I think you can definitely go either way with it. Like normally, I like to pay up at running back and pay down at wide receiver. This year especially, but I think this week you can actually make a case for paying down at running back and paying up at wide receiver. I think tight end is definitely somewhere I'm going to pay up this week, as we have a couple of high priced guys who are chasing records. So we'll get to that as we get to the tight end position, but that just kind of makes it necessary for me to have to find value at both the running back and wide receiver position if I'm paying up at tight end. So this is an interesting week for sure.
Kev, how are you attacking the slate? All the value that's going on, I find it, nothing you do ever surprises me. But if this is ever a week to get some of your low end value plays in, I mean, this is the week. You're the value king. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, this week is an information based slate. This week, so really paying attention. It's a lot like NBA this week more than ever, because monitoring who's in, who's out is going to really help you out. I think at certain positions, I think some like we'll get into, but like just for example, Royce Freeman, I think this week, who's 3,500, a lot of people are going to be all about, and I'm not in love with that, especially going against a Chargers team that has something still to play for, depending on what happens in the Chiefs game. So I would rather play, probably Devontae Booker, who's the pass catching back in that role. But I think things like that, situations like that, where Royce Freeman is projected to be the fourth highest projected owned player on the slate, and I think that's insane. So, things like that, I think trying to find, edges, in other places. I know a lot of people are going to, the kind of theme of this week is targeting players who in games that matter. I think some of that's a little overblown. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And there's certainly teams to stay away from. Like, I probably wouldn't play anybody from the Cowboys or the Seahawks. But I really wouldn't target many of those guys anyways on a week-to-week basis. So that doesn't really change anything that I do outside of maybe like a Zeke. But so overall, I think that's kind of where everything is going to come down on, how this slate goes. But I do think there's a ton of players in really good spots. So.
Well, let's talk about some of those players in really good spots here. And I want to try and keep it as loose as possible, because week 17 is just such a not a disaster land, but it just all over the place. Like you said, Kev, we're going to have to be monitoring news pretty much up until tomorrow. If you follow, any of your beat writers, Adam Schefter's of the world, make sure you're watching what's going on in those pre-games. But let's get into quarterback here and talk about this position. As we already know, some people are going to be sitting, like a Drew Brees, where Teddy Bridgewater's starting. This is doing the early builds. This is a position where I found myself, not wanting to get cute at all with this position. Patrick Mahomes up there at the top at 7,100 on DraftKings, FanDuel, whatever the case may be. Like this guy is just awesome. And the price tag never seems too high for this kid. I mean, he's pretty much been flirting around this 7K range for the past 3 weeks. And he still has 2 performances over 24 points on DraftKings with that. I mean, 48 touchdowns on the year, only 11 interceptions. He's going against an Oakland team defense that doesn't really scare anybody. And he's one of those guys where I just love playing him because I don't have to necessarily force Tyreek Hill into my lineup. I don't necessarily have to force Travis Kelce into my lineup, and the guy can still, get you the 24 to 30 points that you're looking for, and not have to pair him with guys so you can play guys in good positions. So Mahomes is definitely a guy I was looking to in early builds. I mean, you got Nick Foles here, who just threw for 50 attempts nearly in his last game, 4 touchdowns. This is a road game for him going into Washington, but the Foles magic is real, I guess. This guy has been something else with Philly. They have to win in order to, keep the playoff hopes alive pretty much. And he is only 5,900, well over his price tag that he was last week, but I still have interest in him. There's a guy down the way that I want to talk about. Actually, there's 2 guys that I want to open the discussion on, but the third guy is Phillip Rivers. And listen, I know this is in Denver. I don't usually like playing Phillip Rivers in these divisional games. He just always seems to, struggle a little bit. But earlier this year, week 11, we saw him play Denver. It was at home, but 43 pass attempts. He hit that 400-yard mark, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I'm not really concerned about the interceptions here from a DFS standpoint, at least playing on DraftKings. They don't really cost you that much if the quarterback is going to throw. And Chargers are pretty much in a position where they control their destiny here. Win against Denver would be huge. Granted, if KC loses, then they can get that bye. But they definitely, are trying to get the seeding positioning. So this is, it's with the quarterback position. I just don't think we need to get cute this week. I want to play guys who are in prime spots. The 2 guys that I want to talk about, though, are Jared Goff and a Baker Mayfield. I'm not really sure. I haven't seen too much talk about Baker Mayfield. But Cleveland, controls the Steelers' destiny. I'm not sure how they're going to attack this game. It's in Baltimore. That Baltimore D is legit. But for a guy who is a little bit mobile at that $5,300 price tag, I'm wondering if you guys want to go there. And Jared Goff at 6,200, no Todd Gurley. We had a discussion about Goff not too long ago, and Kevin really wasn't sold on his talents. But this is a game that the team could be leaning heavily on him, and they pretty much are trying to play for seeding as well, because if they lose, Bears win, then the Bears are going to be getting the bye, and they're going to be playing Wild Card Weekend, which is just insane to think about when just a couple of weeks ago we were thinking it was a foregone conclusion. Them and the Saints were getting a bye. So besides those 2 quarterbacks, Kevin, who are you looking at this week? Or not besides those 2 quarterbacks, but I will talk about those quarterbacks, and then who are you looking at this week to play on DraftKings?
Well, like every week, it always starts with Patrick Mahomes. The dude just balls. Of course, the Chiefs need this game to get that first-round bye. So, it seems all systems go here in Kansas City for the Chiefs going against the Raiders. So, I mean, he's 7,100. There's nothing that tells me that you can't play him. I think he is definitely going to be the most chalkiest quarterback on this slate, especially with everything that they have to play for. You could tell me a story about Ben Roethlisberger as well going against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's defense has been just destroyed by injuries and has just been awful this year. Pittsburgh has to win this game to get in. So, there will be, going with which, honestly, I mean, a lot of people have like almost made the Steelers out to be like they're dead. And I mean, yes, they need, the Browns to beat Baltimore, but I think that's the way that the Browns have been playing, I would not put that bet past the Browns one bit. I think the Browns are going to come out and look at this like it's their playoff game. So so I do think that Big Ben is definitely in play. Antonio Brown popped up on the injury, report this week. I guess he's dealing with some sort of a knee issue. We don't know if he's going to play yet. Whether he plays or he doesn't play, I do think Big Ben is 100% in play and is a nice pivot off of Patrick Mahomes, who is 7,100. If you want to kind of get a little different than the field. So Big Ben is definitely in play. Matt Ryan is a quarterback that's at 6,300. Had a really good week last week. Goes on the road this week to play Tampa Bay. I have no problem with that. Really, I mean, Matt Ryan in the last 3 weeks has been pretty solid. 21, 25, and 20 DK points each of the last 3 weeks. So if this is a game that Tampa Bay can keep it close, because I also really like Jameis Winston on the other side. Barring any sort of, I think there was reports that they may want to, take a look at the backup that, earlier in the week that was said that, but other than that, it's all we've really heard. But Jameis Winston at 6,100 also, in that game, I think this is a game that I'm really going to want to target. I want a lot of pieces from this game. I think this is going to be a sneaky game, one that, neither team has anything to play for, but I do think that this game could end up being, a really nice shootout where that there's not going to be a lot of ownership here. So, and then, there is some other guys that are down. I mean, this slate with 15 games on it, there's so many different options to go. You're not going to see high ownership on any of these guys. Even the highest projected, which I said was Patrick Mahomes, is that looking at about 19% ownership and on DraftKings right now. So, I mean, the ownership is going to be low on all these guys, but I think there's a couple other guys that are interesting and, interested to see what you guys think. But Sam Darnold, really shout out Ryan, who I think that you're the one that was all over Sam Darnold last week, and he really balled out. Each of the last 2 weeks, he has put up big numbers. And in this matchup going against New England, again, these teams that aren't playing for anything are going to go into these games like it's their playoff. They want to knock out these teams or, mess up their playoff chances or, knock New England out of a first-round bye or do whatever they can. So Sam Darnold has really played well. Him and his connection last week with, really, you did well last week if you played Sam Darnold, Robbie Anderson, Chris Herndon, and even Elijah McGuire. With the Jets mega stack really would have paid off. So I think this week, I think you can go right back to that well with Sam Darnold at 5,200. And then I guess the other guy that I think people are going to have questions about would be Derek Carr coming to Kansas City. Derek Carr is quietly, has been decent. He hasn't thrown an interception since week 8. He's not putting up monster numbers in terms of, output. I mean, last week he only scored 6, but they didn't really need to because they destroyed the Broncos on Monday Night Football. But before that, he had a couple nice weeks with 24 against Kansas City whenever they last played, where he threw for 285 and 3 touchdowns. And then Pittsburgh, where he put up 22 DK points, where he put up 322 and 2 touchdowns. So he definitely can get there. And at 5,100 in a game that's likely going to be high scoring, likely going to be playing from behind, the Chiefs are 13.5-point favorites. I mean, I think in this game, you could target Derek Carr as well.
Interesting. It's always weird to hear Kevin tout Derek Carr, but there we have it. Maddie, quarterback position, man. Talk some sense into us.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward for me. You guys already mentioned the two guys at the top, and Mahomes and Ben. They both make a ton of sense. These are two teams that are playing for something this week. You have the Chiefs, who still have not clinched their division, as the Chargers can steal that from them if the Chiefs were to lose this week and the Chargers were to win. So the Chiefs are going to run their starters out there until they get a sizable enough lead that they're comfortable pulling those guys. But I don't think that would happen until the fourth quarter at the earliest. So I wouldn't worry too much about that for Mahomes. But between both Mahomes and Ben, you can feel really comfortable about playing these two guys, especially I mean, price 7K, it seems like a lot because they're the two highest priced guys, but in reality, these guys should be 7,500 to 8K, and I think they're both underpriced. These are two teams that are throw first offenses, and they're playing against two of the worst defenses in the NFL here. So, I mean, even with Connor back, while Connor was playing for Pittsburgh all year, they had I think the second most pass attempts or second highest pass percentage of plays. So the Steelers love to throw the ball. They're at home where we love to target them. We may get a limited AB, or he may not even play at all. So that would really funnel the offense through Juju and Connor. And I mean, Cincinnati, they're just not going to be able to stop them. So I think you could absolutely load up those two guys with Big Ben and have a nice get all of the Pittsburgh points this week, which could be north of 30. So I'm definitely going to do whatever I can to pay up for one of these guys. And I think I side with Big Ben over Mahomes. But I mean, both guys are in play up there. And then dropping down a little, I actually really like the Jared Goff call this week, Ryan. Last week they played Arizona, and Arizona is awful against the run and actually somewhat decent against the pass. So the Rams knew going in that they wanted to establish the run and get C.J. Anderson going, which we kind of mentioned last week, or at least I know I did, that I prefer to have the scheme over the talent. So last week we saw C.J. Anderson just plug right into that scheme, and he fit into Todd Gurley, took over his role nicely. It helped that Arizona's awful against the run, but this week we have San Francisco, who's actually been somewhat decent against the run this year, but they've been awful against the pass. So you kind of have a flip the script here, and that could lead to some Jared Goff production, as they should have to throw the ball a little bit more this week than they did last week, because I don't think C.J. Anderson is going to get as much going on the ground as he did last week. So I think the Jared Goff call makes a ton of sense, and that should play out nicely. And then Nick Foles, I love that call too. We saw what he did last week. Granted, he is on the road this week, but 5,900 is pretty cheap. So I don't hate that call either. And then I agree with the Sam Darnold call. I mean, he's come on late pretty heavily, and I mean, playing New England, we've seen New England struggle with speed, and the Jets have some speed on their offense between McGuire and Robbie Anderson. So I could see Darnold having a pretty decent day for a cheap salary as well. So I think I'm on page with what you guys are rolling at QB.
Before we move on to running back, Maddie, one of the guys that I will say that we need to be taking credit for, mostly you, is Josh Allen, just having, an incredible year from a fantasy standpoint. Like, this dude has just been hitting his stride towards the end. Do you find yourself trying to get any interest against him? I mean, this is a guy who was going against the Patriots, looked pretty great. The running floor that this guy has, I think I saw, I think it was from Adam Levitan, that Josh Allen is getting 8 yards, 8 DK points for just his running ability on DK, which is great from a quarterback perspective there. And he is going against a Dolphins defense that, they always have a chance, I feel like, with the special teams in their defense to get a score or two. But other than that, like, if they're not a scoring defense, they really don't scare me, especially with a quarterback who has some running upside there. So, one of the guys at wide receiver who I love, and we could talk about it later, is Robert Foster. Would you be willing to pair them in a tournament perspective, or is that more so like a cash game play for you at the quarterback position?
Absolutely. No, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do have Josh Allen interest this week. I mean, this dude, like you said, and like we said back in week 2, like, this guy's rushing upside is insane. I mean, he ran 10 times a game in college, and we're seeing the same sort of volume here in Buffalo. I mean, over the last few games, 5, 9, 9, 9, 13. Like, this is insane rushing upside, and he's extremely athletic. And now he's going to be up against Miami, who, one, they haven't stopped the run all year, and two, they haven't stopped the pass all year. And back in week 13, Allen put up 34 DK points against them. He threw 33 times for 231 yards and 2 scores, rushed 9 times for 135 yards. I mean, like, Allen's scary to play whenever he's got an awful pass matchup, but this is probably the easiest matchup in the NFL in terms of passing against. Miami's been so bad this year. So I do like Josh Allen this week. And I'm glad you brought him up because I do have Robert Foster pegged as a wide receiver play, and I just overlooked Allen when I was going through the QBs. But I think you absolutely can play Allen this week.
Yeah, 6K just doesn't seem. I mean, he's getting up to where he should be priced, but still at 6K with all the value on the slate here. You know, if he could get you 20, you know, or more. I mean, that's a guy who, you know, I don't think a lot of people will be thinking about on a slate like this. So, go ahead, Kev.
I was gonna say, you know, speaking of Allen, what about the other Allen, the Kyle Allen that's playing for the Panthers this week at 4K? You know, we sort of wanted to play Taylor Heineke last week. Taylor Heineke was okay, especially at 4K. I think he ended up putting up like 14.
Right.
Points, and it really had a little bit room to score a little bit more if he would have found the end zone on a couple chances that he had. Going against New Orleans this week, in New Orleans, and there's a strong likelihood that they sit most of their starters and going against a bunch of backups there for and again he's 4K. Any interest in him?
I just couldn't do it. I couldn't pull the trigger on him. It would be more so of a cash game play for me. I mean, I was one of the people that played Heineke last week. I mean, I just loved that 4K price. And last week I wanted to jam in studs, which is why I paid, you know, lower at the quarterback position to get some of those studs in. And like Nick Foles and Darnold were just too underpriced. But this week, I don't feel like you just need to go there. Like that, you know, he could get you 15, I guess, but you know, what if Mahomes drops a 30 burger, Roethlisberger drops a 30 burger? Hell, Allen could even, you know, get 10 more points than he does. So I just don't see it, you know, coming to fruition in a cash game. You know, if you wanted to play him, sure, what, you know, why the hell not? If you want to try and jam in some of these studs who say that they're going to play, but other than that, like it was funny watching that game, the Panthers, like you could see the sidelines like running to Heineke and trying to figure out any way that they could get him like back in that game because Kyle Allen just wasn't getting it done. And I believe they only let him go a couple possessions before they threw Heineke back in, who took a shot. And it looked like he was going to miss the rest of the game. But I just couldn't go there this week in tournaments like on the way that I enter my GPP lines. Like I don't enter enough to have exposure to this guy.
Well, he only played very, very little. He went 4 for 4 for 38 yards. Kyle Allen did, but my thing is that I don't think you need to because I guess we're about to get into it. But like at running back this week, normally we want to pay up for the studs, and I don't think for me anyways, there's any studs up top that I feel like you absolutely have to play. And with all the value that there is this week, I just don't think there's any reason to pay down for a 4K quarterback. I get the upside there, but I just don't think you need to with how large this slate is and with the number of plays that you have at your disposal. I don't think there's a need for it, but I know he's somebody that people have talked about this week.
Yeah, I just couldn't do it. But let's move on to the running back position and let's talk running backs and who's in a good spot this week. I'll tell you what, I was very excited to play a guy like Brian Hill before they ruled Tevin Coleman to be in. But now that Tevin Coleman's in, I don't think I can go there. But that was a guy I had some interest in. We've been talking about these guys who are priced up at the top, and just kind of let me know. I want to just start off with you guys and let me know what you're thinking. Kev, where are you starting with running back this week if you had to make a core?
Well, I mean, I think, again, I think there's a lot of different ways you can go. I don't think you have to pay up for a running back this week. Christian McCaffrey. Some intrigue there, but though I do wonder if they, how much he plays. They don't. I mean, the dude's been a beast this year, and if you're telling me that I think he's worth some consideration, depending on how much you play, how much volume you're going to play this week. Because if he is a full go, he is at least among all the high price running backs would have the highest ceiling, but I just don't know how much he's actually going to play. And then Zeke Elliott, I wouldn't play him at all. I don't think the Cowboys play their starters at all. Todd Gurley's already been ruled out. Melvin Gordon at 8,400. I have my hesitations with him because it's not the greatest matchup in Denver, and for, at least for a running back. And with having Eckler back this week and Justin Jackson, there's a lot of different ways that could go wrong. For example, if the Chiefs were to just destroy the Raiders, especially in the first half, and they go into halftime, and the Chiefs are up 35-0 or 35-10 or whatever, you could easily see the Chargers, okay, let's pull all the starters, get these guys out of here because we're going to be playing next week in a game that they likely would be playing. Baltimore wins, a very, very physical matchup where you're going to want these guys to be healthy. So it's a tricky situation with a guy like Melvin Gordon. Saquon would be the one, I think, the guy that I feel the most comfortable with. I think he is somebody who, one, is as dynamic as they come. He can, in the first half, he can have a monster game. I do think that they're going to have some motivation to kind of, let him go and do his thing this week against Dallas, and likely going to be going up against their backups. So I think Saquon, especially at 8,200, I'm going to have a fair amount of interest in. You can't play Alvin Kamara. Philip Lindsay's on IR. James Conner and Jalen Samuels is another interesting one. We sort of talked about this, off the show, and I know Maddie will talk about him more. I think he's somewhat risky because if he doesn't see the rushing the receiving volume that we're normally seeing him get, I could easily see Jalen Samuels being their pass catching back in this role this week. And if that happens, then James Conner, at 7,500 is not nearly as good of a play, because then he becomes more of a ground and pound type of option. So I do think there's some risk there. So, as for the high end guys here, there's just not a lot of people that I have just a ton of interest in, nor do I feel really comfortable about their situation this week. So for me, I think you can easily pay down at the position. I think for me, I think someone like Tariq Cohen at 5,900 going against Minnesota, Chicago, definitely wants to try to win this game, especially if something were to happen. San Francisco were to pull off an upset over San Francisco, they would get a first round bye. Minnesota desperately needs this game to stay in the playoff hunt because the Eagles can steal that from them. So Tariq Cohen on the road, I think this is a game that, you usually want to target Tariq Cohen if you feel like that this is going to be somewhat of a back and forth affair. And I do think this is what we're going to see. So at 5,900, you could definitely tell me a story about him. Jamal Williams is going to be pretty chalky. He has that entire backfield to himself. He's 6K. I definitely will be playing him, though it is fair to mention that with Snacks Harrison in Detroit, they have been much better against the run. So that is definitely something to be mindful about. Damian Williams at 6,100. If Spencer Ware wasn't playing, I would be all about. But the problem is Spencer Ware is playing. He practiced in full. He's going to be back this week unless something bizarre happens between now and tomorrow. So at 6,100, Damian Williams, I just don't think you can do that. And Spencer Ware, 6,200. So you're not really getting any edge there. So I probably wouldn't have much, if any, of these guys, just because I don't think you're going to really be able to figure that out. The real questions become once you get down here in this low 5, 4, and 3K range, I think, for me. So Elijah McGuire, we sort of already talked about. I really like Elijah McGuire in this matchup. At 5,300, the dude has been pretty solid. He's getting touches. He's kind of, and especially at 5,300, I think that he is a place you can definitely go to. Sony Michel last week was a guy I really kind of got on late on Sunday and jammed him in a bunch of lineups because he was cheap and really helped and really paid off. Again, New England really has something to play for. It's going to really depend on what type of matchup this is, because both, Sony Michel and James White, one's 5,200, the other one's 5,100. It's tough because it really is going to depend on game script on how this goes, because I do think Sony Michel at 5,200 with the rushing upside and the touchdown upside that he has, I think that really could pay off big time at 5,200. But if you think the Jets can really, even get a lead in this game, then James White becomes very interesting at his own right at that price. And then, going down, you have Jeff Wilson Jr., who is going to be the starter with Matt Breida out. We know, when Breida was out before, he received a large opportunity share there in that backfield going against the Rams. I do think Jeff Wilson is somewhat interesting at 4,400. He is somewhat risky going against a team that really still has something to play for. So I don't know, I think there's some risk built in there with him. Doug Martin against Kansas City. Kansas City has been awful against the run, just embarrassingly bad. Again, all about game, how you feel like this game's going to turn, because if the Chiefs get up early, Doug Martin's dead in the water and doesn't have much opportunity. So, if you wanted to go there, you could. And then last but not least, I guess, and then the biggest question probably that people are going to have to answer is going to be, I feel like, the Royce Freeman debate, which I already sort of hit on earlier. Everybody wants to play Royce Freeman this week, and I think that's somewhat risky in my opinion. He's not someone we've seen be utilized as a pass catcher. If he does not in a game where they're, if they are trailing, which, we know the Chargers have something to play for. If that happens, I mean, Royce Freeman at 3,500, I get the price tag that he has, but he may not get nearly as many touches that people are projecting him for. If he only ends up getting 10 carries in this game and he doesn't find the end zone, that's not a good play at all. I would rather play Devontae Booker on the, because Devontae Booker will be utilized as a pass catcher. Devontae Booker is cheaper. I think Devontae Booker is 3,200. I would much rather play him and know that, his role is far more secure than what Royce Freeman's would be. And then the other guy that nobody's going to play that I really do like is Peyton Barber at 3,600. If one for one, I'd rather play Peyton Barber over Royce Freeman. We've seen him do it. He's had some nice games so far this year. Doesn't have a huge ceiling, but he definitely can. Somebody who can get you 15 to 20 at 3,600. That's exactly what you're looking for. In this same exact matchup against Atlanta, week 6, he had 20.6 DK points, 13 carries for 82 yards. Also had 4 receptions for 24, and a touchdown. So I really do like Peyton Barber at his price at 3,600, and that's kind of where I'm going this week.
Maddie, let's open up the conversation here for running back, and I'm not sure if we touched on guys like Chris Carson going against Arizona at home. This guy's been playing, I don't want to say like beast mode 2.0, but man, he sure looks explosive out there, and this dude just does not want to go down ever. Very hard-nosed runner. Definitely think Seattle has found something in the running game that they've been trying so hard to. They've been trying to fill that hole so hard, but this guy 29 DK points in week 15, 26 in week 16. I do think I hear you, Kev. Like, there are some guys who are down there enticing in that 4K range, especially from that Oakland standpoint, because I have found myself going to Jalen Richard a little bit in game stacks that I have KC going. With that game expected to get out of hand. But I just think that it's, again, the running back position is not a position where I want to get cute. So I want to get guys who are in high volume situations who I know are going to be on the field. And at this point, a lot of those guys fall in that 6K range for me. Maddie, are you finding yourself being more balanced at the running back position, or do you have a couple lines? I know you only make a couple, but do you have some lines there where you're kind of, you get a Melvin Gordon and somebody cheap, or, maybe if Zeke plays, you consider playing him and then going cheap. Is that the case?
So I think what happens with the wide receiver injury news is going to dictate where I go at running back. Because there's about 5 guys at running back that I'm looking at right now that that are on my short list, and I can see myself playing all of them. So with that being the case, like, it's going to be a matter of where's the rest of my roster going that leads me to these running back guys that I love. So I'm not usually I start my roster with running back, but this week I actually feel like that's going to be the last position I plug in, just because there's guys I love at each price point, and I think that I can make it work based on what I do with the rest of my team. So starting at the top, I mean, Kev mentioned he doesn't really love Melvin Gordon, and I tend to disagree here. Yes, Melvin's touches are kind of alarming each week, but I mean, this guy has been so efficient week in and week out on his limited touches that at this point, I don't even worry about the number of touches Gordon's going to get, because every week I fade him because his touch share is down, and every week he explodes. It's just the nature of who he is and how good he is in this offense. And the Broncos have actually kind of been susceptible to the run over the last couple of weeks. 4 weeks ago, Mixon had 82 yards on only 12 carries. Jeff Wilson had 93 yards on 20 carries. Then you have Chubb, who had 100 yards on 20 carries. And then last week, Doug Martin had 101 yards on 20 carries and a touchdown. So, I mean, the Broncos, they can give up a little bit on the ground, and I think Melvin Gordon's in for a decent week here. He's definitely somebody that I would pay up for if I have the salary to do so. And then outside of him, James Conner is the other guy that if he's playing, which I assume he is, then I'm just going to lock button him in because I know there's concern about his ankle and could he re-injure it and whatnot. But I mean, it was just a sprain, so it wasn't like a break or anything, and he's coming off surgery or anything like that. It was a sprain, so he's had to rest it and heal up and all that. But he's logged 3 full practices this week, which to me that tells me that he's ready to go. If he had like snuck in maybe 1 limited practice on Friday, then I'd be a little more concerned. But the fact that he logged 3 full practices this week is that tells me he's all systems go and he's ready for a full workload here against Cincinnati, who it's a auto plug and play at running back to play somebody who's playing against Cincinnati. So I think James Conner at 7,500 is just a lock button, assuming that he plays. And then I absolutely love the Chris Carson call, Ryan. He's a little more worrisome on DK because he doesn't necessarily catch passes, but I mean, his volume and his red zone role they're just unmatched right now. And I mean, Seattle is just committed to running the ball, and at home against Arizona, we just saw CJ Anderson run for 140 something yards last week, something ridiculous. So
yeah,
I mean, Chris Carson, he's due for a monster outing here at home, and Seattle's playing for a playoff spot. So they're not going to just take their foot off the gas here. They're playing to win. They're going to get up early. They're going to run the ball. And I think they're going to lean on Carson the entire time. And then dropping down a little bit further, I love the Jeff Wilson call. We saw a couple weeks ago when Burrito was out and San Francisco was playing from behind. Wilson had 10 targets. So, I mean, this guy seems like he's going to be game script proof, and he's going to have about 20 opportunities this week. And at 4,400 going against the Rams, who have given up a decent production of the running back position, I think that's a spot that you can load up on. And then finally for me, somebody who's kind of off the board and somebody nobody's going to talk about this week, but I actually love is Josh Adams at 3,700. I've attacked Washington all year on the ground.
Let's go.
I've every single week, whoever plays the Washington Redskins, I've used the running back against them because all the advanced metrics point to the Redskins not being very good at defending the run. And earlier in the year, they were shutting down Zeke, they were shutting down McCaffrey, and I was like, this is not sustainable, and they're just going to start to get torn up by running backs, and it started to happen. And they started to give up massive games to opposing running backs. And yes, Josh Adams has had 2 down weeks, but I mean, this is a spot where they can go up early on the Redskins, and they can look to lean on Adams. And as long as he's effective, he's going to continue to get the rock. I mean, even last couple of weeks, averaging 1.9 yards per carry both weeks, he still got 11 and 15 carries. So if that bumps up to 4 to 5 yards per carry, he's going to get 20 touches here. And he's really the only running back in that outside of Sproles, but Sproles is more so used in the pass game. But I think you can definitely take a shot on Josh Adams at 3,700. And I think he could sneak into the end zone for you.
Yeah, that was. Oh, go ahead, Kev.
No, I was going to say, I mean, I didn't want to cut you off whatever you were going through. But I mean, the Seahawks have nothing to play for. They've already locked a playoff spot up. At most, they could go from the 5th to, or what are they, the 5th seed right now? They could go from the 5th to the 6th seed is the most that could possibly happen with them. And that would take a couple of things to happen for that to even take place. So they really have nothing to play for. Chris Carson has been a guy who has been a little bit banged up this year. So you're paying $6,500 for him. He's not the $4,700 you're used to paying for him all year. And even if somebody like Penny is out, Mike Davis could easily get some run here and stuff like that. Like Chris, I would not feel comfortable. I get the matchup. If this was a normal week, yes, I'd be all about Chris Carson too. But this week, I mean, they really don't have anything to play for. And there's been talk about them resting their starters. So this is a team that I wouldn't be surprised to see some surprise inactives tomorrow, and wouldn't be surprised if Chris Carson was one of them, because they don't have anything to play for, and you don't want to go out there. Their offense isn't some dynamic offense where they can withstand losing somebody like a Chris Carson. So I think Chris Carson could have a very limited role in this game. You're going against Arizona. It doesn't matter if you win or lose this game. They've already locked up the playoffs, so that would be tough for me. To play somebody like Chris Carson. Like if I was going to do that, I'd rather play Joe Mixon if I was going to do that and pay the extra $200 for someone like Joe Mixon, who's going to see locked in, a large market or a large opportunity share of that entire backfield, and someone who's going to see pass catching work as well. I don't love Joe Mixon. I'm just saying, I would rather play somebody like that. Then I would rather play him, just because I feel like that's a very risky situation to play him, or even a Dalvin Cook for a team that actually has something to play for. If they lose, they're out. Yes, it's a tough matchup against Chicago, but I think, we know that Dalvin Cook sees a lot of opportunity as a pass catcher as well, which I don't expect him to get much on the ground, but through the air, I think that he's somebody that could also, have a good game at 6,300. So I can't play Chris Carson at all at his price, because I have no idea how much he's going to play, and he's a complete dart throw in my opinion.
I mean, it is Pete Carroll, though. Like, when have we ever trusted Pete Carroll to do anything logical?
Right.
But
they did it last year. They sat there. They did the same thing last year, and they pulled their starters and didn't play them all. So,
but there is. I get the whole they're locked into the 5 or 6 seed, but to me, the 5th and 6th seed, like if they win this game, they're locked into the 5th seed, and like me being a Cowboys fan, I'd much rather play the Cowboys than I would going into Chicago and playing that defense in Chicago. So I think the difference between having the 5th and the 6th seed is actually pretty noticeable, and something that they would be wanting to play for, in my opinion. I don't know if that's the actual case, but
granted,
if I was looking at the seeding, and there's a slight chance the Bears could jump up over the Rams, but even then, I wouldn't want to play the Rams over the Cowboys. I just feel like you've already played the Cowboys this year. This would be your second time seeing them. You beat them already once, and I don't know. I just feel like the Seahawks have a better shot at beating the Cowboys than they do the Bears or the Rams. So
you've seen both this year.
Yeah,
we both were the opposite.
Yeah.
So I mean, it is one of those situations. It is tough to trust Pete Carroll, but it would make me feel a lot better if Penny was ruled out. Like if we get Penny, if it's just Carson and Davis, like I'm gonna take some dart throws on Carson. I mean, the attempts have been there. Pete Carroll's also a guy who just never does anything by the norm. Loves to run up the score when he can. Loves to, have the starters out there when he can. So I think that if he does sit Carson will be one of the last guys that he sits in that game. Like he's going to take out Baldwin. He's going to take out Russell. He's going to take out those guys first before he would take out a Chris Carson.
Is Baldwin even playing? I don't even think – is Baldwin ruled out already?
I can't remember. I haven't seen.
I hadn't seen that. That would make sense. That would make a lot of sense. I mean, running back is fun this week, guys. I think that it's definitely cannot go overlooked. A lot of guys in positions that we could target. So we definitely want to see a little bit more news as Sunday is creeping up on us before we go anywhere. Two guys I want to talk about real quick before we move on to receivers. Any interest in a Lamar Miller or who was the other guy I wrote down here? Lamar Miller or Gus Edwards?
I think you can take a shot on Edwards in a tournament, but man, I don't know. The Ravens offense, they don't ever do anything that's like gonna hit a ceiling. Like, I mean, they'll put up 20 points or so, but I mean, they're not going to go out there and throw up 35 points where Lamar and Edwards are going to hit ceilings. I don't know. You can take a shot on a tournament, but I don't absolutely love it.
I hear you. Kev, any interest for you?
Not really. I mean, Gus Edwards isn't. I mean, I think last week was the first week he had a target in weeks. He's not used in the passing game. Again, I really feel like this game is probably going to end up being something sort of like a 13-10, 16-10 type of game. Because I do think Cleveland's going to come out and give them every little thing that they want, because I think that they want to ruin their season. And we saw the same scenario happen last year where Baltimore was supposed to be in the playoffs and then got knocked out. So Cleveland's one of the last teams that I would want to be playing right now if I'm Baltimore, who has a good defense and, an offense that is, more than capable of, putting a little bit of points on the board here. So I wouldn't have a ton of interest in Gus Edwards just because he's not utilized as a pass catcher. I would rather even just the guys that are around him, a Jeff Wilson Jr., Darren Sproles is somebody who definitely piques my interest a little bit at 4,400. Depending on how that game kind of rolls. So no, I wouldn't have a ton of interest, if any, in someone like Gus Edwards.
Okay. Fair enough. Let's talk about wide receiver position. This is my favorite position, even though running backs are going to control the slate, I feel like. But wide receiver is just my favorite because I just love trying to get these guys who are in good spots. Last week, we talked a lot about Robbie Anderson, who was in a great spot. I had a good feeling about Alshon, and he really let me down there. Thank you, Nelson Aguilar, for getting that late deep bomb. Speaking of which, Nelson Aguilar, 3,800 this week. I'm probably going to have some exposure to him. Foles likes him. It just seems like they have a good rapport together. So I can see myself going back to the well there. He's too cheap. Another guy who I feel like is too cheap based on the news that we've received. And Maddie, this is all you. I can't take the credit for this. Chris Godwin, he's 4,300. No Deshaun Jackson. We've talked about it a lot on this pod, what you do when Deshaun Jackson's out, and that's play Chris Godwin. And Kev, you should be interested too if you like Jameis this week. This guy just balls. I believe it was that week 13 matchup against Carolina, 24 DK points, 5 for 101. He does some special things when Deshaun Jackson is not out there in the lineup. And then, obviously Robert Foster, we talked about him earlier. He is a big play threat. He reminds me of a guy like Deshaun Jackson or Robbie Anderson. He can do a lot with few targets. He's getting around the 7-6 range of targets, but when he gets one of those deep bombs, it just opens up everything for you. So 5,100, I still don't think is a high enough price tag for me to want to avoid him. I'm definitely going to be heavier than the field on him. And when we get up to the top, there's a couple of guys who I'm really interested in. I definitely want to monitor the AB situation. If AB ends up playing, I'm going to have a healthy amount of him just because of it's a Cincinnati matchup. He usually does well at Cincinnati. He has good home splits. It's a must-win game. I just don't see it's just going to be like last week. And I played not enough AB, but I had a healthy amount, about 25%. And I felt so great when he put up that 50 burger. He just is awesome. He's the best receiver in the league. So I love him. The Devontae Adams situation, I do want to monitor. He's $8K, which is so hard to pay for, but Rodgers loves him and just peppers him with targets. And if those two guys are going out there and playing, forget what they say about game log watching, but just watch the games that the Packers are in. This guy is all over the field. He does everything. You look at it, 11 catches, 8 catches, 7 catches, 8 catches, 5, 10, over 100 yards in 3 of those 8 games that he's played in. And he just, is making a name for himself as a top tier receiver in the league when you see what his stat line is for the year. If he doesn't end up playing, though, I do have interest in a guy like Valdez-Scantling. Cobb is going to play, so is St. Brown, but Valdez has looked like at times the second fiddle guy. Cobb hasn't been healthy all season, and Rodgers is still, I feel like, having a hard time trying to find him, or they're not on the same page or what have you. And Valdez was under 4K last week. I played him, and the dude paid off late. That game went into overtime, and he got a couple catches there late. But, if he's going to be this cheap and going to be in a position to catch passes, that's something that I love to target. Julian Edelman, he's 7,600. It seems pretty pricey for him, but he's a guy that I would play definitely in cash. He's just so consistent. The thing about the tournament play is you just never know if he's going to find the end zone. If he finds the end zone, then you're sitting pretty with Julian Edelman. He's probably going to get you anywhere from like 19 to 22 points. But if he doesn't have that end zone, you could be sitting in the teens, and that's just sometimes not enough upside at this $7,600 price tag. We've heard about the Brady struggles and what have you, but it seems like it is a great matchup for him. And so I do find myself trying to get some exposure to him as well. Adam Thielen, 7,400 going against the Bears. Yes, it is the Bears, and they offense did struggle last time they both met up. But Eddie Jackson's supposed to be missing, or is going to miss this game. That is going to affect this defensive secondary, I feel like. I mean, Kyle Fuller has been playing great. Amukamara has been playing great. But when you don't have that safety help over the top, I think this is a way that they might be trying to attack them with Thielen. And I know Diggs is out there too. He had a big monster game against the Bears in that Week 11 matchup. But if people are going to be leaning towards Diggs more, I'll have the exposure on Thielen. And then lastly, it's Brandon Cooks this week for me. I just hate DraftKings, how they always price these guys right next to each other. And, Robert Woods just had that explosive week. And Cooks has kind of been, getting there. He just really hasn't been finding the end zone, which has been unfortunate. But he does have better splits at home than he has on the road. And this is a secondary here in San Francisco where if he can avoid, Sherman, I feel like he can get going against this team. He had a touchdown against them in the week. What was that? Week 7 matchup that they had, only 4 catches for 64 yards. I mean, the thing is, he's not getting a lot of catches. But if he can just get that one big play and take it to the house, I'd be willing to throw him in some tournament lines. So that for me is where I'm looking this week pretty much with my wide receivers. Kev, what are we doing from the wide receiver position here? And what are some low-end guys that I might have missed on? Or who?
Well, so for me, I think it starts out with a guy like Tyreek Hill at 8,400. Somebody that we know that can go absolutely nuclear. Hasn't really had that big blow-up game in a while, but somebody who can easily go out and be the guy. I mean, the guy who, if you don't play him, your week's over with, because he has the potential to put up 40 DK points with ease. And there's really nobody in this Oakland secondary that can keep up with him or stop him. So, I mean, Tyreek at 8,400 could absolutely dominate this game. I know I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards Travis Kelce, which makes a lot of sense, especially because the last time these two teams played, Travis Kelce had a nuclear game against them, and Tyreek Hill didn't do a whole lot. But in that game, Tyreek Hill, Pat Mahomes just missed him on a couple of deep shots that would have been easy walk-in touchdowns that would have changed, the way that game went in terms of, overall production between him and Kelce. So I do like Tyreek Hill at 8,400. He is a little bit pricey, but, in a tournament, we're not looking for floor in a tournament. You always should be looking at ceiling in a tournament because we're not looking just to min cash. We're looking to take the thing down. And Tyreek Hill is somebody every week should always be in your player pool because he has that ability that a lot of these guys don't, where somebody like, for example, a Keenan Allen at 7,900, Keenan Allen has like one of the lowest ADOTs in the league, yards per reception in the league. And the guy is, if he does not score a touchdown, he's an absolute bust at 7,900. I mean, he has to have like 15, 16 targets for him to even pay off his price tag. And somebody who very rarely sees, the end zone or doesn't find the end zone all that often because he's not going to, he's not a deep threat. He's not into any of those things. So he's somebody, like you mentioned with Julian Edelman, they're kind of the same guy where if they don't find the end zone, they're not good plays, at least in tournaments anyway, because they're not going to hit that big ceiling you're looking for, and you're paying a heavy price tag for them. So for me, Tyreek Hill is probably my number one play on the slate in tournaments. And then after that, I would love to play Julio. I think Julio makes a lot of sense, pairing him with Matt Ryan, as long as he does get out there and does play. Juju, like you've already mentioned, is a fantastic play this week. Maybe he, if you're looking at the old narrative street there, with him, basically costing the Pittsburgh, Steelers last week with that fumble he had at the end of the game. He wants to come out and bounce back. So 8,300 Juju, I think, is a very interesting play. Going down, one of my favorite plays on this slate is Kenny Golladay going against Green Bay. Green Bay's secondary is awful. And we know Kenny Golladay, in terms of just overall target share, is going to see, in the range of 10 to 15 targets in this game. It's in Green Bay. So I really like this matchup for Kenny Golladay. And has had some pretty tough matchups really the last, 3 or 4 weeks, and still has been able to put up some decent lines. Against Buffalo, no one wanted to play him, and he had 7 for 8 for 146. Did not find the end zone. That's the only really thing. He hasn't really found the end zone since week 11. But somebody who can easily, really see a large target share in this game, where they're probably going to be playing from behind. So I really like Kenny Golladay. He's one of my favorite point per dollar plays on this entire slate at 6,600. And then down a little bit further from there, I think Robbie Anderson is going to be super chalky because of the big performance he's been putting up the last couple of weeks. But, as we sort of talked about earlier, I think, Maddie, you brought it up, the Patriots have no speed whatsoever along their defense. And I think you're going to see bracket coverage coming for Robbie Anderson, where they try to take him away from them. So I do wonder if it's a little bit point chasing with going with Robbie Anderson at 5,600 at his price, coming off the monster performance. In a game where we know New England likes to take away, things that you do best. And so that is one thing that would scare me off of Robbie Anderson a little bit. But if he breaks one open, which he certainly has the ability to do so, can have another solid week this week. Another interesting one, I definitely agree with the Robert Foster call. Xavier Howard's out, so that just, and that's exactly what Josh Allen loves to do, is just chuck the ball deep, and Robert Foster can definitely do that. So I definitely like that call. But Deshaun Hamilton at 5K, I feel like he should be higher priced than what he is with his target share. The only thing that concerns me, and maybe he's more of a cash game guy than a GPP guy, because I don't know at the 5K price range, he's not really somebody who's shown the ability to really go off. He's getting 9, 12, 9 targets each of the last 3 weeks, and has scored a touchdown in 2 of the last 3 weeks. But he's not getting a ton in terms of volume or in terms of yards, where he hasn't topped more than 47 yards in any game. So that does concern me a little bit with him. But, in cash, I think he is somebody you could really consider at, the volume that he's getting. And then, further down, I really, 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 really like DD Westbrook at 4,700. Houston's secondary is trash. They're old. They're slow. And I actually think Blake Bortles is starting this week, that this is an upgrade for the offense. Blake Bortles is definitely a better quarterback than Cody Kessler ever could hope to be. Cody Kessler is absolutely horrible and probably shouldn't be playing in the NFL. So, but anyways, I do like this matchup for DD Westbrook in the Dome. Jacksonville's going to want to come in here and mess up things for Houston if they can. And so I do like DD Westbrook. He's been seeing a healthy target share in this offense. Has kind of been the only really productive guy. The last 3 weeks, he's seen 10, 5, and 8 targets, scored 21, 13, and 12 DK points. If he finds the end zone at 4,700, and he has that, that big play ability in him, could really change the slate. And so I really do like him at 4,700 in tournaments. I think he has that sort of ceiling we're looking for. And then, with Chris Godwin, I definitely agree with Chris Godwin. I love Chris Godwin this week, especially with probably no Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson sounds like he's going to be out the door after the season. But Chris Godwin is somebody that can definitely smash here in this matchup at 4,300. I don't think he's going to carry much ownership. So I do really like that call. And the other one that I think is popping in a lot of ownership projections right now is Traquan Smith. We know that a lot of people are going to be ruled out. Ted Ginn's already been ruled out for New Orleans. Michael Thomas probably won't play. Maybe if he does, it's a drive. So things are kind of all coming together for Traquan Smith to really be maybe the number one option here, and could end up seeing 10 to 15 targets in this game, depending on how things go in this matchup. So 3,700 Traquan Smith, he has really killed a lot of people. I mean, he destroyed me last week. I had a lot of Traquan Smith, and that did not work out one bit. but a game where maybe they try to get him going heading into the playoffs. I don't know. I think he's going to be a guy that's very interesting because he's going to carry some heavy ownership right now. I think he's in the top 5 or 10 among wide receivers in terms of ownership on DraftKings. And it's going to be a spot you're going to have to decide because we know he's a super explosive player and somebody who can, go out and give you, put up 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. And if all these guys are going to be sitting, somebody's going to get the ball. So I think that's something you can kind of take a look at, and with him, because I think, like I said, he's going to carry a lot of ownership and somewhat rightfully so. So that's pretty much where I'm coming in this week.
Eddie, talk to us.
Yeah, I mean, you guys pretty much covered basically the batch of guys that I'm on. I mean, Juju at the top, he's probably my favorite this week. I just love the Steelers this week. I like Diggs. It's a gross matchup against Chicago for Minnesota as a whole, but they're not going to be able to just rely on Dalvin Cook to just run the ball like they have been trying to the last couple weeks, and Cousins is going to have to throw the ball. They are here at home in the Dome. They're not in Chicago. And Chicago has kind of taken away teams' number 1 options all year, and the number 2 option has been the one to kind of go off each week. So I don't think it's a coincidence that Diggs saw 18 targets the last time that these two teams played. I think it's a byproduct of the scheme that Chicago runs, and I think Diggs is locked into a pretty solid target share here this week, and he's only 7K. So on a full PPR site, I think it makes a ton of sense to fire up some Stephon Diggs. And then, I mean, we mentioned liking Jared Goff, but we didn't really talk about any of his pass catchers. I think you can play both Woods and Cooks. I side with Cooks because he has a higher ceiling. He's more he can catch the deep ball and score the touchdown. But Josh Reynolds will take some red zone looks away from those two guys. But I mean, I think that there should be enough to go around that you could see Cooks or Woods or both of them get in the end zone this week. So I don't hate either of those two guys to pair with Goff. And then love the Robbie Anderson call. I think he makes a ton of sense. Robert Foster, I think he makes a ton of sense against Miami. We kind of touched on him earlier. Scrolling down further. So Houston is kind of interesting because Demaryius Thomas just went on IR due to his Achilles. And right now, QT is currently questionable. But if he plays, I think he's somebody that you could take a shot on in tournaments because he should be in the slot against Jacksonville. And Houston does have an outside shot at getting both the 1 seed and a first-round bye here. So they're going to be playing this to win. They essentially just need New England to lose, and they need to win their game, and they get the 2 seed. So, I mean, basically, the Texans are going to be out here running and gunning all game long, and they're playing at home here against Jacksonville, who's kind of been a shell of themselves this year. So if QT doesn't go, I think you can take a look at DeAndre Carter. He's down at 3,600. He's what you look for in full PPR. I mean, he had 7 targets last week, and Demaryius Thomas played most of that game. So I think Carter makes a ton of sense in full PPR format for cheap. And then Ryan, you actually mentioned Valdez-Scantling, and St. Brown is actually going to be. He's listed doubtful right now. So if he doesn't play, I think that vaults Valdez-Scantling into a safe target projection. And then also Jake Kumaro should actually get the start for the Packers as well. And he's min price. So he's somebody that I don't mind taking a shot on in tournaments as well, especially with the news that Devontae Adams is pretty limited right now. So, yeah, that's where I'm looking at wide receiver this week.
For the record, I was not on Jared Goff. So you said both of us. I'm definitely never on Jared Goff. So
that's unfortunate.
I mean, another solid 18 points last week. So really, really helped last week. But no, I'm not on Jared Goff, nor will I ever be. Jared Goff is the WOT.
No, so. You know what? And Kev, I do not agree with you whatsoever. But I will say that this is the time for Jared Goff to start turning it on. I mean, this is, they went into the playoffs last season, and we get it. First year head coach. he was in his second year, and the struggles that they had with Jeff Fisher, you know what I'm saying? I mean, they were pretty much fixing the wounds that Jeff Fisher had made. But now that he's had another year in this offense, and sometimes you have to play with injuries. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast, and we've seen it with teams all around. I mean, look at Philly last year, who had to lose their MVP starting quarterback and fill the role with a quarterback. Like, Jared Goff has to take the reins here and show everybody why he was in this MVP contention earlier on in the season, and kind of put the team on his back in this game. I mean, they cannot go out here and lose this game to the 49ers at home, given what they had done. I mean, they're probably, if they lose this game, like, I don't want to say it's the same collapse as Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh's on the verge of missing the playoffs, but like, this is really going to affect their season if they have to end up playing on wild card weekend. And just all of that talk is going to be like, oh, the Rams can't get it done again. This is just what we saw last year. So there's a lot riding on Jared Goff's shoulders here. And I'm going to be really interested to see how he comes out and performs on Sunday, because they just need him to show up and perform. And they're going to need him to, hit these guys in stride and connect with the receivers when they're open. And, he doesn't have any room for error here. So I'm interested in that. From a GPP standpoint, I do think it still makes sense, because the touchdowns pretty much are going to be coming, I feel like, from his arm. So, I do like Goff this week, but I just needed to go on that. I just need to go on that tangent for Goff.
Oh. I don't want to get it. We've if you want to go back and listen to the amazing debate we had last week, where of course it was me versus them. It always is, and I end up winning, and then I kind of do my victory lap, on them every week. So that's always fun. But we didn't really talk a lot about, at least that I heard, was DeAndre Hopkins at 8,100.
Mm-hmm.
I know you mentioned about Kiki Kuti possibly being out. We know Demaryius Thomas is out, but he's somebody, and again, they're going against Jacksonville, Jalen Ramsey, everything else at home. But, DeAndre Hopkins is kind of matchup proof. And I think you feel like that, especially if Jacksonville can kind of get it going a little bit. We've seen in the past Blake Bortles have big games. And, would not be surprised if Blake Bortles, at least was able to keep this game close with Jacksonville. But DeAndre Hopkins likely could see 15 targets in this game with nobody else to throw the ball to. Now that they've lost Demaryius Thomas, and if they don't have Kuti. So is there any interest with him at 8,100? I mean, that's priced down from what you would typically see. And normally he's up there at the 85, 86 range, and at 81, with the target share. Is that somebody that you guys are wanting to play at all?
Yeah, I have to go back and look at this, but I do remember the earlier matchup when we were talking about DeAndre going against this Jacksonville team when they were still, somewhat relevant. And he has some insane splits against them. I feel like he's got a touchdown in like 3 of his last 4 games or 4 of his last 5 or something like that. I'm not sure if the yards have been there, but I know that he kind of gets up for this matchup when these guys face up, and he, like you said, Kev, he is matchup proof, and he has been for years, regardless of who the quarterback is. So, granted the situation that they're in, he could definitely be a guy that I look to in tournaments at 8,100. I mean, to me, it would kind of be like the same thing of playing a Devontae Adams, except for that it's DeAndre Hopkins, and Adams hasn't quite got there yet, but they're around the same price tag for good reason, because they are the quarterback's #1 options, and the targets are there. So I would definitely have some interest there for sure.
And it's also worth noting that AJ Boye will not be playing in that game either. So their #2 corner they will be without.
Yeah, that's definitely key, talking about that there. All right, let's move on to tight end here, and then we can get to defense before we close it out. And I just can't believe they are doing a Millie tournament on DraftKings, which I think is hilarious, and we can talk about that when we're building the Millie team. But let's talk about tight end. And obviously, we have these 3 studs at the top with Kelsey, Ertz, Kittle, Gronk all the way down there. He hasn't been doing much, 5,100. But for me, you have two tight ends here who are pretty much playing for the tight end crown, I believe. I think Kelsey has about 50 or so yards over Kittle right now, and they both are pretty much on pace to break the tight end yardage record. Kittle is in a by far better situation than Kelsey is, in the sense that there's nobody else to throw to. I'm not saying that Kelsey doesn't have a chance to get there, because he's Travis and Kelsey, and he's going against the Raiders at home, so that's great. But when you look at the price discount that you can get at $900, I'm playing a Kittle. I mean, Pettis is out, Breida's out, Goodwin's out. Who the hell are they going to throw to? Like, I've seen this happen before. Just Kittle's going to get peppered with targets, and I'm fine with that. 3 of his 4 touchdowns have come at home on the season. He's just, he's everywhere on the field, and has had a touchdown drought the past 2 games. But against that, I mean, we've seen it against Denver. Like, if they want to get this dude the ball, they will. 37 points in that matchup. And also, we had Kyle Shanahan coming out after that game in Denver and regretted not giving him the 5 yards that he needed to get the single game record. So I think for sure it's on track to get. I think Kittle needs like 99 yards to break the record. So I think a 100-yard game is a foregone conclusion here. I think they're going to try and do everything they can to get him that. And then it's just a matter of what Kelsey has done so that he can keep up with that. But I just love playing Kittle. 6,300 is just not expensive enough. I think people will go back to Zach Ertz there, but 6,700 on the road against Washington, I would just much rather play the other 2 guys. From a cheap standpoint, I don't want to chase the points with Kyle Rudolph. I still always have Vance McDonald interest. He's just too cheap. Kind of disappointed there last game, only getting 1 catch, but went for 49 yards. If he can get a touchdown, you could be in business there. But it's just Kittle and Kelsey just offers so much more for you that it's hard to ignore. Some of these other guys down here like don't really interest me. CJ Azuma, you could talk me into at 3,500. If I was building a ton of lines, maybe a Demetrius Harris, although he hasn't been getting the targets. So yeah, I mean, I just don't even want to overthink it this week. Maybe I have some Gerald Everett interest too if I'm playing Goff, but for me, it's just Kittle and Kelsey, and I just have to just live with that, with the value that we have on this slate. Maddie, is that pretty much what your take is?
Yep, Kittle and Kelsey for me as well. You mentioned them both chasing the single season receiving yardage record for a tight end. Kelsey needs 54 yards to break it, and Kittle needs 100. Plus, he needs 100 plus. He needs to beat Kelsey by 54 yards. So, I think you see both. I mean, the Chiefs need to win this game. Like, they're not going to just roll over. I mentioned that when talking about Mahomes, and I mean, they know that Kelsey can set records here. So why not utilize your one of your best pass catchers to win a game you need to win and get him some records. So I'm going to do everything I can to play Kelsey this week. But if I can't fit him, I'm going to save the 1K salary and just play Kittle, who's chasing the same record. And they're both in good matchups too. It's not like they're in bad matchups. So
yeah, absolutely. Kev,
take us off the deep end, Kev, at tight end down here at the bottom.
No, he's going to put us on the deep end.
I totally agree with the Travis Kelce and the George Kittle calls. Those two make a ton of sense to pay for. But I mean, you guys are just disrespectful about some of these other tight ends. I mean, this is a great tight. I'm excited to play tight ends this week. You didn't mention Evan Ingram, who is in a fantastic spot at 5,300 at home, seeing a nice target share, at the position. Each of the last 3 weeks has scored double-digit DK points, 10, 15, and 17 last week, going against likely a backup second-unit defense against Dallas. So give me all of the Evan Ingram at 5,300. Past him, you have my guy, Chris the Man Herndon. I love that dude. Like, that is my guy. I absolutely love this dude. Super explosive tight end against New England. We've already talked about New England's lack of, of speed. If you're wanting to play Sam Darnold, if you don't want to play Sam Darnold, I'm going to have a metric ton of Chris Herndon this week as well. Really like him. He's not priced up at 3,400. Fantastic spot. And then Ian Thomas at 3,300 with, Kyle Allen starting. I think you could easily see him, have quite a few opportunities. Last week, he had 5 targets for 48 yards and a touchdown. At 3,300, you can definitely play him. And then you have my dude, Mark Andrews, coming off that big 83-yard touchdown. Him and Lamar Jackson seem to have a little bit of a chemistry. I really do like him. Mark Andrews is a name that we will be hearing for many years to come. He is, one of the best, if not the best, tight end prospect that came out last year. He is the pass-catching tight end in that offense. It's egregious that they ever drafted Hayden Hurst. What a terrible decision that was by them. But, in the first round. Anyways, I definitely agree that Travis Kelce and George Kittle, or even Zach Ertz, all of them are in play. All of them are in fantastic spots. But there are definitely some of these other tight ends who are in, just as good of spots. I know Rob Gronkowski this week, and looking at DraftKings ownerships and GPPs, is pretty high up there. I think he's actually the third. Yeah, he's the third highest among ownership projections for tight ends, according to Pro Football Focus. So it is Travis Kelce at 28%. It is Zach Ertz at 16%. And then you got Rob Gronkowski at 11%. Kittle is actually... Oh, wow. Where is Kittle?
All the Kittle this week, boys. That's all I needed to know.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, I mean, I do think Ingram does make some sense there with Eli being the starter. That's just a situation I can't trust, though, because, who's to say that they won't pull Eli at half or something like that? And Kyle Laletta, I'm not playing anybody tied to him.
Is there something wrong with George Kittle? They have George Kittle projected at 0.4% ownership.
No, there's
let me see what FanShare's got him at.
There's no way.
There's no way he's that. No way.
But the tight end position it's just getting to the point where just give me a guy who's going to get 20 points, and I'll make up the points elsewhere on my rosters. And Kev, for I do think that Herndon makes some sense. And hell, if somebody wanted to talk to me about playing, Kroom, if they had an Allen stack, so be it. But why go there this week when those guys can, definitely dud with the value that's elsewhere? You don't need to play these guys to, if you like the Peyton Barbers of the world, if you like the Chaquan Smiths of the world, then why are you not trying to jam in, Kittle and Kelce this week or Ertz?
Yeah, nobody has those 3 guys ceiling at this position. Whereas you can find running backs who have that are cheap, that have the ceiling of some of the top guys, just because of the new role and matchup based on week 17. But it looks like FanShare has Kelce's the highest for a good reason at 20%, and then they have Kittle at second at 15%. So still not egregious, but that seems. I think that's right. That sounds right. And Ertz, they have third at 13%. So those 3 guys are pretty similar.
That's what I figured that's how it would be. But
yeah.
I mean, you can run 2 tight ends this week. I mean, that's always an option.
For sure.
And that's really a way to differentiate yourself from the field, is having 2 tight ends, because not many people do that, especially this year, as bad as the tight end position has been. And some of these guys get, opportunity share and target shares like wide receiver ones do. So, jamming in, Kelce and Kittle, or Kelce and Ertz, or however you want to do it, is certainly a way you can go to differentiate yourself and differentiate your lineups among everybody else.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's talk about defense, boys, before we build this Millie team and close it out. Defense this week, you got the Rams at the top at 39, Seahawks come in at 3,700, Steelers at 3,500, which I do not get that at all. I don't care if it's the Bengals. This defense is absolute trash. Texans at 3,300, Blake Bortles, so they're going to be chalky, I feel like, but I think that's a trap, and I just haven't been playing the Houston defense all that much recently. And, then we got Chargers, Patriots, Cowboys round out the 3K range. For me, I'm looking down in the 2K range. Bears are 2,800. Yes, they're on the road against Kirk Cousins, but Kirk Cousins turns the ball over, and I'll take that for a defense like that. Even though they are missing Eddie Jackson, like, this is a defense that is very opportunistic. Got to the quarterback last time. I think that they, definitely there's some merit to playing them at 2,800. Chiefs at home, 2,600. I'm loving that. If we can get a special teams touchdown here, and they just play so much better at home. The home and road splits for the defense is very real. They're going against Oakland, who does not scare me at all. So at 2,600, I definitely have some exposure to them. And I guess if I was paying up for one, it would have to be the Seahawks, just because Arizona's offense is just so atrocious. But I don't want to play that $3,700 price tag. So I'm pretty much in that 2,800, 2,600 range with the defenses that I'm playing this week. Kev, what are you doing at defense?
Yes, I mean, I don't think there's a huge need. I will not be playing the Rams defense, the Seahawks. Definitely not the Seahawks. But I do think that there's some merit to be made with, like, the Chargers at 3,200. You could make a case for them. Past that, the Bills at 2,700 at home, I think is a very interesting spot. Philly at 2,700 and the Chiefs at 2,600, I think are all defenses that I'll have some sort of exposure to. The Packers at 2,400, and then, I'll probably just play the 49ers just because Jared Goff's the worst. But I won't do that. But anyways, but yeah, so for me, it's basically going. I'm probably going to end up paying down at tight end. I highly doubt I have too much of the Chargers or anybody over 3K at that point matter. I think the Eagles, Chiefs, and Packers are probably the three that I'll have the most of, and maybe sprinkle in somebody like the Vikings going against Mitchell Trubisky, who is known to have some turnover issues, and so Minnesota defense at home at 2,500 I think is interesting too.
Maddie, what say you?
I think you guys just overlooked one defense, and that's down all the way at the bottom, 2,100, the New York Giants against Cooper Rush and the Cowboys. I absolutely will play some Giants defense this week against the Cowboys backups.
Okay. Zeke isn't ruled out though, right?
No, I think they play a couple series and then they pull them. They're going to get them some work, but it's not going to be. My guess is maybe a quarter at the most. I mean, Vegas tends to agree because that line is Giants are favored by almost a full touchdown. So I'm gonna roll with what Vegas is thinking here.
2,100, huh?
If you feel like, though, I know we didn't talk about it, but if you feel like that you're
gonna suggest Cooper Rush, aren't you?
No. Rod Smith.
Rod Smith, yeah, absolutely. You can play Rod Smith. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no shot they risk Zeke here.
Preseason.
Zeke's been kind of banged up too. Like, if you watch him last game, he was limping around a little bit, and he was dealing with a shoulder injury 2 weeks ago. And they're not going to do anything weird with Zeke. It's going to be Rod Smith, and I even think they activated. They brought up Darius Jackson from the practice squad. Well, you shouldn't play him, but I just think it's a matter of they're going to play guys that aren't Zeke. And I think you can absolutely take a shot on Rod Smith in tournaments.
Yeah, no, for sure. We definitely overlooked that portion of that conversation there. Yeah, Giants 2,100. They've kind of struggled the past 2 weeks, but when they do get to the quarterback, they've had they had 10 sacks in 2 back-to-back games there. So 2,100. We talk about it a lot to pay down on defense because it's just so the variance there is just so wide that getting some of these low end defenses could definitely pay off to get off the chalk if it doesn't hit. All right, boys, that's week 17 and pretty much in a nutshell for us. Let us get into this Millie Maker lineup team, the last one of the regular season. I cannot believe they decided to do a Millie team on week 17. It's just outlandish to me. But I digress. We'll play it and we'll try and spike here and we'll see what we can put together with the plays. We should have a definitely interesting build as Maddie and I are kind of on one area as usual and Kev is on the other side. So we'll start off with Kev this week. We're gonna build this week 17 Millie Maker team on DraftKings right now. All right, so Kev, start us off, man. You got every position available. Where are we going?
Let's lock in Tyreek.
I don't mind it. Go ahead and go next, Maddie. I'll go third.
Let's James Conner.
Love it. Go ahead and give me Robert Foster there. Just get him in there. Don't have to worry about that. So we got Connor, Foster, Hill, about 48-33 per position left.
All right. Lock in Kenny Galladay.
All right. Galladay is in 6,600. Maddie, back on you.
Let's go Josh Allen.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
Miami's so bad.
Yeah,
you know what's going to happen? Miami's going to end up winning this game like 45. Yep.
Probably 0 points scored. Yep, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Okay, let's see. Let's go ahead and play. I'm just going to play. Oh, that's tough. You know what? Forget it. I'm going to play Kittle and see what we can do here. I want the points.
All right. Well, then what does that leave? 33-6.
I see a path. Depending on where you go, but I see a path that we can take here.
Well, who do you want to? So, all right, then you pick next.
I was going to put in Jeff Wilson.
I thought you were going the Adams route, but
yeah,
same thing.
And it just leaves you off $100 from using the Giants at D. Let's go Adams since I'm on him. Let's go Adams. He's 37. So then that leaves you 4,300 in the Giants or 4,400 and less, or you can pay up and play somebody who's costs more or costs less at flex.
Can I do it?
You can play Godwin.
That's exactly. Yeah, that's why I made that noise. I literally clicked on Godwin and saw the 2,100, and I was like, "Oh,
dude, he's got to be a lock this week." I mean, he's had 3 straight awful matchups: New Orleans, Baltimore, and Dallas, and now he gets the freaking Atlanta Falcons. Sign me up.
Locking in Chris Godwin. So that leaves 2,100 there, Ryan.
I mean, well, let's see here. No, I'm just playing. That leaves the Giants defense. We'll play it. We're locking it in there. So just to recap here, we got Josh Allen at quarterback, stacked with Robert Foster at wide receiver. Then we got James Conner and James Conner and Josh Adams as our running backs, and then Kenny Galladay, Tyreek Hill, George Kittle, Chris Godwin, Giants defense. That is our Week 17 Millie Maker team. Kev, go ahead and submit that. And that is going to be a stamp on the regular season for the DFS DegeNation podcast. But don't worry, we'll still be playing the playoff slates with you guys. And we will be sure to make sure we tweet out that schedule when you can expect those shows to come out. But Week 17 is in the books, guys. It's been a fun and interesting 2018 season, to say the least. But we got a lot more to build on here at the DegeNation pod. Make sure you guys are downloading the show, subscribing to it, iTunes, Stitcher, Podbeam. On the website is where you can find it too, at thefantasyauthority.com. Also, make sure you guys are getting into that Slack chat. I still see Kev adding a couple new people to our thread here the past couple of weeks. So shout out to you guys who are joining in on the DegeNation bandwagon. We love having you guys over there, and we'll definitely got to make sure to be in there this week, as it, like we said, there is a lot of news and everything to dissect and digest pretty much over the next 24 hours is when lock will be, just past 6 minutes here. So yeah, it should be a fun one there. Get into the chat. We love having you guys talking the slates. And fellas, any last words to round out the regular season for our listeners here?
I would go.
Go ahead, Kev.
I was going to say, I probably wouldn't go super crazy with this week because of, the variance that this week is going to bring. And, but this is one of my, I do really enjoy this slate. But I'm really, really looking forward to the playoff slates. Like, it's one of my, it's one of my favorite times of the year. I think where you kind of get people, I usually do well with the playoff slate every year, especially with the lower amount of games and everything else. And I think things are a little bit more straightforward in how things are going to go. And, doing a little research separate yourself from everybody else. So I'm really looking forward to the playoff slate too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Maddie, what you got?
No, I think this is a great week to pay attention to ownership, and well, every week is, but especially this week, and kind of take a chance on some guys that you have interest in that are going to be lower owned than the more popular guys, and just hope that it works out for you. Because I mean, like Kev said, there is a lot of variance this week. So I mean, if there's a top guy who becomes chalk and then he ends up sitting or something, and you didn't play him, you made a pivot at a lower ownership, then you have a massive edge on the field. So I think this is a good week to take a shot on something like that. Get a little bit uncomfortable.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because you will see a lot of chalky builds, a lot of similar lineups. So if you are playing in some of the high pools where there's tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, please try it, like Maddie said, just even 1-2 pieces just to go off of the radar there could set yourself up for some success there and not be a little bit different than the field. But yeah, guys, week 17 in the books. We appreciate having you guys as always. Thank you for those who tuned into the live show there on YouTube, which will be repurposed, and you can still find that leading up to a lock tomorrow. And then the tweet, we'll make sure that the show is out as well. For Maddie Dickinson at Maddie_D_30 on Twitter, and for Kevin Steele at FantasyRat13. This is Ryan Williams signing off at RyanAlexander_W. We will catch you guys for the playoffs. This is an end to the regular season. Playoffs are upon us, and good luck to all you guys with your Week 17 builds. We are out.